Allow the bell to invite you to come into the present moment, to find yourself in this space and at this time. And if it feels comfortable, you might even choose to close your eyes, or you can bring them to a downcast gaze a few feet out in front of you. Gently wiggle yourself into place so that you feel your body making contact with the earth. As you ground through your sits bones, through your legs, wherever you're making contact. Once you have found a sense of grounding, a sense of rooting, a sense of support, invite your breath to help you find a sense of expansiveness, a sense of expansion through the spine as the crown of the head lifts toward the sky. Noticing perhaps how that expansiveness in the body challenges the groundedness, and then finding the balance. Finding the balance between being overly grounded or being overly expansive, so that you ultimately settle in the space in the middle, where you feel rooted and peaceful and supported, and at the same time uplifted and expansive. This is the focus of our practice today, this idea of finding the middle way, of finding balance between opposites, of finding equilibrium, perhaps even equanimity. So I invite you now to draw your attention to the breath, to begin to notice how prana, how energy is moving into and out of your body. Consciously receive each breath as it travels in through the nose, through the throat, into the expanses of your lungs. Noting perhaps that there is a balance in how you inhale. Sometimes our inhale is too shallow, sometimes it's too deep, sometimes it's too long, sometimes it's too short. And so I invite you simply in this moment to observe how much breath is traveling in. How much breath is traveling out. And then either experiment or imagine what it would be like to draw more breath, to expand the lungs even more fully, maybe feeling and inviting the breath into the bottom sections of the lungs, the places in the lungs where there's often a pool of stagnant blood that does not get oxygenated because the breath is too shallow. So either imagine or actually try to breathe in such a way that the breath travels all the way in and all the way out. You might arrive at a point where this feels like an overinflation of the lungs. Perhaps sit with that for a breath or two. And then either imagine or experiment with drawing a shallow breath, a breath that doesn't travel very far into the lungs at all. That maybe just sort of skims the surface. And sit with that for a few rounds of breath to notice what it is like to breathe in this more restrictive way. And then invite a balanced breath. A breath that's right in between those two extremes. And with curiosity, notice how the body and the mind receive this breath. You might also notice that you have to give this breath a bit of extra attention right now to really bring balance into it. And so you could choose a certain dimension of the breath, say, for example, the length of the breath. To come up with a length of the inhalation that feels just right. Maybe counting how long it takes you to breathe in just the right amount of air. And then breathing out in the same way. Same length, same volume. Balancing not just the extremes of the full breath cycle, but also balancing the inhalation with the exhalation. Take a couple more rounds of this very conscious way of balancing the breath. And then with a certain trust in your own inner wisdom and intuition, release the breath to its natural state, inviting it to flow in and out naturally, without trying to exert any sense of control or agency over the breath, simply receiving and letting go of the breath in its natural state. Take a moment to notice how your mind and your body are receiving this breath. How is the energy of this natural breath reverberating through your embodied self, through your verbal self, your narrative self? From this place of balance, I invite you to find a hand position that feels auspicious to you. Maybe the hands rest on your thighs, palms down or up. Maybe the palms come together at your heart, or maybe the palms rest on your chest, one on top of the other. From here, invite your head to bow to your heart and receive an intention for your time on the mat today. If an intention arises for you that feels appropriate, seal it into your own heart with an inhalation. And then send it out into your community with an exhalation. Release your hands if they were lifted, open your eyes if they were closed, and lift your focus. And go ahead, if you were sitting on a prop, you can go ahead and remove it. And depending on how you were faced on your mat, you may need to turn, as I just needed to. Have your strap handy and have at least one block handy so you don't have to search for props. Scoot yourself forward on the mat so that you have plenty of runway behind you so you can roll down. And you can either use your hands to bring yourself down, or if you'd like, you can stretch your arms forward and then roll yourself down onto your back, one vertebra at a time, using the power of your core to make this a very balanced movement, not too slow, not too fast, not over or under efforting. Finding the middle way as you sink into the floor and receive its support. And then bring the feet a little bit closer to you. And see if your hips need to walk away from the shoulders a little bit to create length in the spine, or maybe the shoulders want to walk away from the hips. Creating extension in the spine, even here, as you're grounding into the earth on your back. And then invite a gentle movement into the pelvis. So you'll take an anterior tilt, a forward tilt in the pelvis. This will create more of a lumbar curve, so you probably can slide your hand under the small of your back here. And then as you exhale, create a posterior tilt, so that now the lumbar is moving closer to the floor. And if you had your hand under there, you'd probably have to remove it to receive that particular motion. And then move with your breath. Inhaling forward, exhaling down, just a few times, sort of finding the extremes here in the range of motion in your lower spine, mostly your lumbar. Yes, you're doing some work in the hip joint, but you're not coming anywhere close to the extremes of your range of motion, just in terms of what's possible here. Do this just a couple more times, forward and back. You can flow, you can move with the breath, or you can flow faster physically than you are energetically. And then settle at the middle point between the two extremes of your lumbar, so that you have a little bit of curve, but you're about halfway between your maximum curve and the flatness that you had on the ground. From here, grab your block and slide it between your legs so that it's just below the knee, and it will touch both your thighs and your shins. So I'll try to show this a little bit better. And the reason for this particular placement is that you will press both your shins and your thighs into the block, so the whole leg draws in toward the center rather than the knees coming in. So it's a straight movement in, it's not a diagonal movement in. As you draw in, you will probably feel this as a grounding on the outer arch of your foot. And so drag the leg in and release. Drag it in and release. Your own rhythm here. You might flow with the breath. You might go faster than the breath, or maybe you even decide to squeeze in and hold. This is a really, really nice way of balancing the SI joints, balancing the sacrum. It's a lovely way of finding the middle way in your spine, especially after you've been sitting for a while. And then take your block and rather than having it on the short edge, which is where we started, turn it to the middle edge. So this orientation, same placement at the legs, step a little bit wider apart now to accommodate the wider width of the block. And then again, draw the legs in and relax, and draw in and relax. Just a couple of times, and just notice what difference the different width between the legs might make in this movement. For some people, it gets easier the wider the legs go. For some people, it gets harder. It just depends on your own anatomy. Do this one more time, and then we will change the orientation of the brick yet again. Now we'll go to the widest width. So now the brick will fit either into the thighs or the shins. It's probably too short to really fit on both. So just get it as balanced and centered as you can. Walk the feet wider apart to make up for the increased width of the brick. And again, squeeze in, relax out. Squeeze in, relax out. And just notice how this reverberates through your body, through your spine, and which feels more auspicious for your body, the narrowest, the middle, or the widest setting. That's just data, it's just information. And then go ahead and release the block and grab your loop. Mine is a little bit too long. You'll probably start with something of about this nature. And you slide it over the top of the knees so that it ends up catching your thigh and your shin in the same way that we let the brick touch the thigh and the shin. And then the legs will be about the distance of the short edge of the brick apart from each other. And now this time you're doing the opposite. You're dragging the legs out against the strap and you're relaxing in, dragging out. This is really, really subtle movement and relaxing in. Moving both legs out, both legs in. A couple more times. And again, your choice here of how quickly you do this or how slowly. You could even just press out and hold. And then go ahead and lift your legs so you have access to the buckle and loosen the loop about a couple of inches wider than it was before. Step the feet apart. Now they're about the distance of the middle setting of the block. And then drag the legs out and relax. Drag out and relax, or hold or move more quickly. Yogi's choice here. So to follow your own intuition of what might feel best. And then notice how this particular movement reverberates through the low back, through the SI joint, through the legs, the feet. You might notice that now you're dragging the inner arch rather than the outer arch. And then you guessed it, we're going to lift the legs again and we will loosen the loop yet a little bit more to make a distance of about the biggest setting of the block. And we'll once again drag both legs out. And relax both legs in. And fully bring the mind into this activity. Let the mind explore how creating this balance in the sacral region, the SI joint, reverberates through the low back, and maybe even through the rest of the spine, all the way to the head. And then let go of the effort. You can lift your legs to release your loop and set it down next to you. Once again, grab your block. Bring it to the narrow setting to begin with, but if you have wider hips, you might need the middle setting, so you can play with this. For most people, it's the narrow setting, but for quite a few, it's also the middle setting. And then squeezing the block to begin with, and then imagining pulling out, find the middle way so that there's enough squeezing of the block that it won't fall, but you're not like really pressing in on it. And from that balanced action in the pelvis and in the legs, lift the hips up toward a bridge pose. But we're not going for a back bend, we're going for almost like a reverse plank here. And then lower the hips down. So the back actually stays straight. The movement's happening out of the hip joint. And we'll just continue to do this a few times with the balanced action at the knees and the balanced action at the sacrum. Flow with your breath here. Inhaling up, exhaling down. Maybe even closing your eyes to feel this action from the inside out. Notice how creating this amazing physical balance in the low body, which is so often unbalanced, might reverberate in the breath, and how it might captivate your mind. Flow up and down one more time. Staying fully present with this last movement, not getting sloppy or unbalanced just because you know it's the last time. Giving it as much honor and respect as all the other repetitions. And remove your block. And just take a moment to feel your body on the ground. Perhaps again, closing the eyes to really move into an interoceptive state. Drawing all of your attention into the region of the sacrum, the pelvis, the SI joints, the entire pelvic girdle. And see if you can tap into a sense of balance here, a sense of peaceful ease, yet engagement, aliveness. You might even direct the breath into the low belly here. To add even more of a sense of balanced energy to that region of your body. Low belly rising and falling. Your mind paying attention, feeling your body from the inside out. Now, with the least amount of disturbance of this balanced action that you've created, lift either one knee at a time or both knees together, depending on what your intuition tells you will be most auspicious for maintaining that sense of balance in the pelvic region, and even the shoulder girdle. And draw the knees toward the chest, any amount. Giving yourself a little bit of a hug. And just noticing what your own intuition is telling you about what's balance action for you here as you give yourself a hug. Noticing if there's, for example, an urge to walk the hips away from the shoulders. Notice if there's a sense of needing a tighter grip on the legs to really close the gap between the chest and the thighs, or if there is more of a sense of needing some space. If you're not sure, experiment with both extremes and then find that place that represents balanced action. Or pulse between the two extremes and create balance that way. Trust your yogi instincts to know how this gentle movement might want to unfold for you. And then invite the hands to the backs of the thighs so that there is the freedom to lift your legs any amount towards straight. We've had the knees bend for quite a bit of time, so they may not want to fully extend here, and that's perfectly fine. Just notice how this reverberates through your hamstrings. And then press the legs into the hands as they're catching the thighs and pulling the thighs close. So you're creating opposite motions here. You're moving the legs away and you're dragging them in at the same time. And then find the perfect middle way, whatever that perfection is for you in this moment, where you find balance between these two opposing actions of drawing away and drawing in. And then notice how this balance might reverberate into the low belly, into the low back, and how it travels up through the torso to the shoulder girdle, maybe even to the head. Take one more breath here. And then bend the knees, release the feet down. Let the knees come together as the feet walk mat width apart. Rest your arms by your side, palms facing up. And if it feels appropriate, you might close your eyes here, or you can find a downcast gaze. And draw your attention once again to your breath. Observing how the breath is unfolding for you in this moment. And then trusting that the breath will continue to breathe you. Let go of even this little bit of attention to the breath. Let go of your body. Let go of your mind. And invite every fiber of your being to sink into this moment, to move into this space for a few moments of silence. Gently begin to reawaken into this moment. Perhaps inviting your senses to move outward, taking in the sounds and smells around you. Perhaps inviting small stretches, movements, or wiggles into your body. And then inviting a conscious breath in and out. And then with the best balanced action that's available to you in this moment, begin your journey to your right side and ultimately to a seat. Once you have found your seat, once again, choose a hand position, palms resting up or down on your thighs, resting, touching each other at your heart, or resting on top of each other at your heart. Bow your head to your inner wisdom. Reconnect to your intention. Draw a deep breath in. Release a deep breath out. And when you feel ready, you can release your hands if they were lifted. You can open your eyes if they were closed, and you can move your focus